Hi, today's episode is supported by the people over at Choose to Think. They're offering to make you and your colleagues more relevant, more curious, and better equipped to face the future that you're going to see. They do this for a wide spectrum of users, of course, by offering a series of products and services collectively known as CTQ Compounds. One of these compounds, for example, is known as the Daily Reader. This is a product that aims to help you build a reading habit and make you more curious. They do this by offering one daily reading, which takes about 15 minutes to complete and is expertly curated just for the cohort that you're part of. There's also a penalty built in, which makes sure that you keep to the habit and don't let off for even one day. There's also a product called Future Stacks, which aims to make you more relevant for the future and offers you wisdom from a wide variety of sources. You can check out their content on the link down in the description, and we thank them for supporting this episode. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. We're at Sported, which is a new show from the Banyan Tree. Sported is about tales from beyond the field, where we bring you interesting stories, experiences, and the people from the world of sport, but who are not spotted on the field very often, but sported very important roles off the field and behind the scenes. So today we have with us Mr. Samar Singh Sheikhawat, who has brings to us a ton of experience in scenes behind sport in various capacities and across different sports. We're very thankful for his time. And Samar, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me over, Sohum.
Yeah. So I'd just like you to begin by telling us a little bit about how you had the experiences that you had, the opportunities that you did, the roles that you took on, and the capacities you filled in for. So could you please tell us a little about how you came to be where you were and what your journey was like?
So I will restrict my answer to sports, since that's what is the subject matter of your of the talk today. So I've been a sportsman all my life. Born and brought up in the tea gardens in Assam. We played every sport under the sun. I was in the boarding all my life. We played every possible sport that man has invented. We even had sepak takraw, which is I think a Malaysian or Indonesian version of volleyball that you play with your feet. We had croquet. We had horse riding, we had boxing, swimming, and all the regular sports: tennis, squash, badminton, football, hockey, cricket, every possible thing. I played basketball seriously for school, and I played Delhi State. I played for college. I played for university. I played for India under 19 for the final camp. So I've been a sportsman personally all my life. I'm a teetotaler, non-smoker, non-drinker. I even sort of run, lift weights, and play sport even today. Now, even though I'm 56 years old, and I don't intend to stop that at any point in time. So that's one aspect that has sort of been my close association with sports. The second one is that I've been very fortunate to have worked with organizations such as Cadbury's, Lever's, PepsiCo, and United Breweries with the Kingfisher brand, where we have had deep involvements with sports, whether it was in terms of sponsoring sporting events, having sports stars as brand ambassadors, doing on-ground engagements and what we call 360-degree media engagements and amplification of both sporting events and sports stars and sponsorships and so on and so forth. So I've been exposed to that pretty much all my career. The third part is that having worked at Kingfisher, where we actually owned sporting club teams, either owned or were co-owners or major sort of majority sponsors of these teams. So at Kingfisher, for instance, we co-owned Kingfisher East Bengal Football Club. In fact, I was on the board of Kingfisher East Bengal Football Club. We sort of co-owned and sponsored the Royal Challengers Bangalore, Sahara Force India. We co-owned and sponsored, and I've been deeply involved not just in the sports part of it, but in ancillary functions like administration, running, leadership of these sporting endeavors in some form of trying to run them as a business. So I've been very blessed in terms of personal experience with sports, having worked with companies that have sponsored, sports and sports stars, and also having worked in companies which have actually owned sporting clubs. The last one is, by virtue of all these three aforementioned interventions, I've also had the tremendous personal sort of good fortune of having met some of the greatest sports stars in the world. And I've learned personally a lot from them. I use a lot of my interactions and the lessons from those interactions in my sporting talks and leadership and life lessons that I sort of talk across academia and industry forums and for other clients. So it's been I mean, I would say I've been more blessed than most people to have had, the osmosis of sports at various levels through my career.
Right. And that just goes to show the depth of your engagement at various levels across different sports. And then very fortunate to have that experience, and we're fortunate to have you here talking about some of them. So to begin with, I'd like you to speak about some of the experiences you had as part of Royal Challengers Bangalore, which is, something I note about them is they've never won the IPL, but they have a fanatic following. I mean, their following is almost like people are almost willing them to win the next one, and it happens every year. And they have some of the most rabid fans that I've seen in the IPL, at least, because I am from Calcutta, and even though I don't follow cricket too much, I do support the Kolkata Knight Riders. But we don't have fans like that, and they just build them on. So, how was it being part of RCB? What was your role, if you want to talk about it? In what capacities were you responsible for things? And then maybe we'll get into some more details.
You're an Arsenal fan, right?
I'm an Arsenal fan, yes.
So have you been to the Emirates Stadium? And when did the Gunners last win the English Premier League? When did they last
They,
win the English Premier League? So
they
but
won
nothing
it.
will. Yeah, when did they win it? Sorry.
They won it in 2003, 2004 in the Invincible season.
How many years has that been? But that will not never change your loyalty towards Arsenal, right? And Arsenal, for
Never.
some reason, seems to inspire fierce loyalty. I mean, the number of people who are Arsenal fans that I keep meeting are sort of very large. I don't know whether it's an age-gated sort of platform, but I have an Arsenal joke which I will tell you later on when Sauradeep and you and I connect.
All
So I
right.
see RCB, the Royal Challengers Bangalore, was not owned by United Breweries Limited. It was owned by then United Spirits Limited, what is now Diageo India. But obviously, we were big sponsors for Royal Challengers Bangalore. In fact, the Kingfisher sponsorship of the RCB was so strong that people thought that Kingfisher owned RCB. Not even United Breweries. Say Kingfisher is a brand that is far stronger than the company United Breweries.
Right.
And they actually thought that we owned the Royal Challengers Bangalore because that's been the way we have sort of associated ourselves with it.
Mhm.
I think the genesis was that the intent was to sort of promote the whiskey, the Royal Challenge whiskey, as well as Dr. Malia's love for cricket in general and IPL in particular, because you must understand that IPL is not just cricket. I call IPL of course, it is the single largest sporting event in India. For India, it is bigger than the Football World Cup. It is bigger than the Copa del Rey, the Premier League. It is bigger than Formula One. It is bigger than the Olympics. But I call it the greatest reality show of India. Because there is family involved, there's sort of music, there's food, there's the entire environment. There's famous celebrities who own sporting club teams, and so it's just as they say in the hinterland, tamasa. So it's much more than just. And to that extent, my friend Lalit Modi, who's been a personal friend for 35 years, is a marketing genius, regardless of the troubles that he's in with the government. So it's a reality show, but as far as the RCB is concerned, Soham, give me an example of a corporate anywhere in the world actually owning and running a sports club. You will struggle to find those examples because the skill sets required are so different. RCB should never have been owned and run. I mean, it can be owned by USL, but it should never have been run by USL. Now that I don't work there, and they can't sack me, but they should have either hived it off early enough when a decent valuation was coming and let it be run by professionals. Uh, Without taking names, there has been a lot of interference in team selection, and I don't mean just players. You know, I mean captains. We've had Rahul Dravid, we've had Anil Kumble, we've had Daniel Vettori, we have Virat Kohli. There've been revolving door of coaches and managers and support staff, depending on who's in favor with the powers that be there or not. Um, Unlike, for instance, the Mumbai Indians and the Chennai Super Kings. there has been so much stability of team, captain, managers, owners, and support staff there, and the results are there for you to see. I think MI has won it 5 times, and CSK has won it 3 times, and they've been in the final some 8 or 9 times. I mean, I think out of 13 editions, 8 times they've been won by these people, twice by KKR, once or twice by Hyderabad, there's two different teams, and once by Rajasthan. But yes, you're right. RCB on paper has to be the best team never to have won IPL.
Yeah.
You've got Chris Gale, you've got AB de Villiers, you have Virat Kohli. Over the past, you've had KL Rahul, you've had Zahir Khan, you've had so many sort of well-known players. Shane Watson, who for some strange reason have all performed better outside RCB in the last few years once they've been let go by RCB. Now that brings into question the quality of leadership that is being displayed at RCB. I'm told that Virat Kohli has now the longest serving captain of any club team across any sport anywhere in the world. He's been, I think, RCB captain for some 9 seasons or 9 years. I believe there is no sport in the world. You can Google check or fact check that, but I'm told there's no other sport in the world that has had one captain in club sport for 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Having failed to win IPL, he would have been sacked 10 times over. Coaches would get sacked in just a year. I mean, coaches lose finals and get sacked. Forget about never making it to the finals. So there is a lot of interference in the team management by the owners. There is one of the things I've seen, Sohum, is that the worst thing that can happen is having a star-struck senior management. When I work for Pepsi, the hero, I've worked with Shah Rukh Khan, Sachin Tendulkar, Saurav Ganguly, Amir Khan, Kareena Preeti, Saif, Fardeen, all these people. The hero was always brand Pepsi. These stars or cricket stars were all assets to help sell Pepsi or help drive brand salience of Pepsi. Similarly, that's the philosophy that I adopted at Kingfisher. Our iconic line, divided by teams, united by Kingfisher. We had between 5 and 7 or 8 team sponsorships, and we had all the stars in our films, but they were treated like assets. Here, always Kingfisher. I wouldn't go for shoots and stuff. I've never been for that. I would leave that to my agency and to my subordinates and teams and juniors. Now, here I have CEOs and CMOs of companies taking selfies with those cricketers in their cars and bringing their friends and family to meet them, etc., giving these young boys and girls, because really that's what they are, and sort of exaggerate, as my father says, an exaggerated sense of their own importance. So star-struck senior management is a really bad thing. You get hampered. I think if you look at the players that were released, look at how Chris Gale has performed for the Kings 11 Punjab. Look how KL Rahul has performed for the Kings 11 Punjab. Look at how Shane Watson performed for Chennai Super Kings. So quality of leadership definitely is something that I would. So I would say too much interference in team selection and running. I think quality of leadership is an issue. Short-sighted approach. They always seem to get it wrong in terms of the balance between batters and bowlers and keepers and reserve staff and Indian versus foreign talent. The second part of your question, yes, it has huge brand value and a massive fan following. See, the whole philosophy IPL was they were uncertain whether they would be able to replicate the English Premier League or La Liga or Serie A or Bundesliga's city-based loyalty.
Yep.
But I think, and these things happen. I mean, Arsenal is what, 50, 60 years old, whatever it is. Man U, it's, is maybe 100 years old. So these things take decades to build.
Yes.
And the teams who've done it well are Mumbai, Chennai, I would say to an extent Kolkata as well, and Bangalore. But there has to be a sort of consistency of players, consistency of performance. I think marketing and branding around RCB has been extremely strong, which has helped in building the brand value. Chinnaswamy Stadium is a very pleasant viewing experience that always helps. Getting access. You just have to, the last 100, 200 meters is a pain, but you can park and walk, etc. And the whole environment around Chinnaswamy, the location is in central Bangalore. Bangalore as a city is very safe for women and children. It's a great family experience. There's no question of women and children getting into trouble. And so it all adds up to the entire experience. Also, the fact that beer and snacks and food are allowed in a fairly large part of the stadium. And the fact is the glamour around ABD and Virat and Chris Gale and historical it all comes together. In fact, I would say ABD is probably the most popular non-Indian cricketer in all of India today. Likable man you'll ever meet, and if you've ever been in a Chinnaswamy full house with when De Villiers goes out to bat, and you have all the Kannada boys going ABD, ABD, ABD. I mean, your hair will stand on end. It's like that. It's incredible. So they've done a great job of building that brand and hopefully driving value and valuation if they are so interested. Now, of course, in the last few years, Som, they've hived it off into a separate company, ostensibly run by professionals, but overseen by people still at USL, who interfere in matters that they have absolutely no business in doing.
Right, right. Would you say that given that you're highlighting this, problems with leadership and such, that sports like cricket, they do suffer from this even outside the club team. Like we have so much talent that it gets to the end, gets to the Indian team anyway. But then, would you say we're suffering from some mismanagement or leadership issues even in the domestic game in Ranji, or even going up to the levels just before or below the Indian team in cricket specifically?
See, it's a complicated answer because I'll have to answer for cricket in a different way and for other sports in a different way. But perhaps we will address that in a later segment of our conversation when we talk about India as a sporting country and the economics of sports. Mm-hmm. Cricket is in a far better shape than most other sports, and frankly, this has changed after the 1983 World Cup. I was born and brought up in the tea gardens in Assam, and we used to study in Delhi. And if you went home to Assam, whether you were going by Tinsukia Mail, where we had to change to meter gauge at New Jalpaiguri or New Bongaigaon, depending on which year you were going, all across the land, 2,500 kilometers, you would see little boys and girls, largely little boys, playing footballs in the fields. And I mean, I have very clear memories, literally from Delhi to Assam. Football was a sport that played in the fields along the railway tracks. I haven't traveled by train for a very long time, but I did travel for many years after the 83 World Cup. That all changed to cricket. I think the 83 World Cup was a huge inflection point for cricket in this world, in this country. And the infrastructure that has been put in by the BCCI, the stadium, the facilities, and so on and so forth. They say build a mall and people will come. So they've built the stadium and people will come. You build cricket grounds and pitches, talent will get unearthed, which is something I will emphasize on when we talk about potential for other sports. Mm-hmm. It's better than it used to be, Soham. The how shall I say? I think Saurav Ganguly has done a lot. Previous BCCI sort of heads have also done a fair amount, both for first division and Ranji cricket, as well as women's cricket. It's definitely better than it used to be, right from infrastructure to training facilities to the availability of coaches and supporting staff, financial remuneration, contracts, the hotel that they stay in, the quality of travel that they sort of are allowed to use. Then, things like appointing Rahul Dravid, my good friend Rahul, as the India under-19 coach, and thereafter now as the KSCA coach, because I think they've understood very clearly that you need to put in all the money and infrastructure and talent to develop the ecosystem at the grassroots level so that eventually, they can go on to play for the country and see the talent pipeline that is available in India today. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine from England who's a sports physiotherapist, and we were just talking about if India plays the one-off Test Championship final in New Zealand against New Zealand at Lords, what will be the team composition? And he was saying Shami will be back, because the ball swings, but in June in Lords, when it's warmer, it doesn't swing so much. Akshar will probably get dropped, Jadeja will be back. That kind of conversation we were having. But the point is, for every position in the Indian team today, there are at least 2 replacements that could fill in and potentially do the job as well. And that's purely as a result of all the work that has been put in at the ground level. I think the greatest example of that, since you're such a football fan, is the German machinery of bringing school talent into and sort of
Yes.
showcasing them at the Bundesliga. I mean, where did Mesut Ozil come from? Where did Thomas Muller come from? Where did all these, and these people are now veterans. I'm told that Germany has 10 or 12 players who at 19 are better than both Muller and Ozil were when they were 19 years old. So the
Germany's
pipe, yeah,
the pipeline system. I'd just like to point out as a point. They actually make sure that every team is paying their fair share to develop this infrastructure. It's not just
yeah,
the top teams who benefit from it. So there's a system where you have to pay for it and you can gain from it because it's like an exchange of talent at a very young age. So if you
that's
get
right.
some, you get to keep them and you grow them into better players. And if they shine for your club, then you sell them on for more money, and that also goes back into the ecosystem.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
exceptional,
So,
the
but
management.
everything that you're saying, that's how a business is run. That's how exactly businesses are. And today, you may want to buy a brand from another a company if it's up for sale because it fills a gap in your portfolio, or you may want to hive off something if it's non-core business to an available suitor. The entire startup ecosystem is similar to that. So, we need to change our mentality and run sport as a legitimate business and economic sector that is a business of sport. That is what needs to be done.
So maybe this is a great point at which we want to move on to what I would like to call the corporate intervention in sports. And as you said, you had experiences across sports, and I want to, understand. This is a wide-ranging question. So after I'm through with it, you can take the pattern and run as you wish. How, why, how, and why do corporates, intervene in sports in that they buy teams or they're sponsoring players or they're being part or trying to be a part of that spectacle, and when what impact does it have on specific sports? If you could give me with some examples, some stories or some interventions that companies have made where you've been a part as sponsors or owners, how, why, and what is the impact of corporate intervention in sport?
Well, officially, the reason for companies to get into sport and cricket in particular in India is simply eyeballs. Exposure of their brand or products or goods or services and the messaging for those brands, products, goods or service to a larger number of eyeballs. That's one reason why, let's say, cricket gets much more than, let's say, kabaddi or badminton or tennis do.
Hmm.
So the first one is exposure to uh, a large number of eyeballs. The second reason would be typically sport is a young person's game. It used to be a young man's game. Increasingly, it's a young woman's game as well. So if your brand or product or service caters to the youth, it is seen as a viable medium in exposing a large amount of, large number of youth. And when it comes to cricket, it cuts across demographies and geographies. In fact, in cricket is increasingly becoming a smaller town game in India because all the young affluent boys and girls are all into Premier League football. In fact, football is the fastest growing sport on television in India. It's growing faster than cricket, but in terms of overall size of viewership, cricket is still ahead. Now, most companies do it for that reason. Very, very few companies, Soham, do it well. I mean, what's the connection between Paytm and cricket? What is the connection between Byju's and cricket? In fact, Byju's tells you to please study and don't play any sport, right? What's the connection between any of these startup companies and sort of and
Yeah.
any of the sport that they sponsor? It's just they have a lot of money and they have very little brains. So just put in money. देखो हिंदुस्तान में भेड़ चाल बहुत ज्यादा है. So let's do whatever the other person is doing, and let's just
Doing,
go ahead
yes.
and we have so much money, need to spend it in any case.
True.
Now, in the old days, the big sponsors for sport were, companies like PepsiCo, Airtel, Hero Honda, Britannia, and so traditional brand and service companies. We had finite budgets, and the clutter was far less. I mean, television channels were far less, and digital wasn't even talked about. With print, radio, outdoors, conventional ways of doing it. It fit in with most of the core audience of these companies. It's all about young and soft drinks and going out, friends, brotherhood, bonding, camaraderie, friendship, etc. And therefore, PepsiCo sponsored, cricket tournaments and World Cups and had many sports stars, who would come and try and persuade youngsters to drink their soft drink. None of them touched it themselves because of the sugar content. But those days, these concerns were not, as widely shared. At Kingfisher, we've done it very differently. First of all, the difference, since I've worked with both PepsiCo and Kingfisher, beer and sport is as old as beer itself. You go back to the where beer was developed by the monks in medieval England because it was safer to drink spirits than it was to drink water, because you die with contaminated water, but spirits and beer going through a process of fermentation and maturation would typically kill bacteria and microbes, and therefore the monks developed it to drink something during Lent, where they couldn't have either food or water, so have beer instead. Smart people. And because it was developed in England, largely medieval England, it was typically sold, or let's say medieval Europe was sold at room temperature, which is why even today, brands like Guinness, etc., because there's no refrigeration at the time. But even then, they was associated with Scottish stone throwing and carrying your wife and running and carrying your sheep and running, that whole atmosphere. Now cut to 5, 7, 800, 1,000 years later, sport and beer is as old as beer itself, and we're not the only company that does sport. Heineken sponsors the Premier Champions League for the last 20 years, and I handle that in India. Budweiser sponsors the FA Cup. Carlsberg used to sponsor Liverpool Football Club. They do Formula One and so on and so forth. So there's a great connection there. Also, it's typically beer is a young man's drink, by and large, and sport is a young man's preoccupation. Either they're playing it, but a much larger number of people watch it. And therefore, there's a good connect. At Kingfisher, we had 4 platforms: sports, music, food, and fashion, of which sports was by far the dominant platform. Very importantly, in media dark economies like India, Soham, you're not allowed to advertise as freely as if you were in other product categories. And therefore, anything that is experiential is what you try and use to drive brand recall, brand usage, and brand salience. So whether it's music concerts, food pairing, food festivals, or having Kingfisher available at all the pubs, bars, restaurants, airport lounges, etc., fashion shows, but overwhelming dominance is driven through sports. So we try, and where sports are being watched, we would like beer to be consumed, whether it's in the stadium or in your home. And why did we decide to do only IPL? Because the values around IPL, the glamour, the style, etc., playing under lights with a white ball, colored clothes, it's not cricket. It's cricket on steroids. It's cricket on color, and those values fit in with Kingfisher. Now we've done sponsorships across IPL, ISL, Formula One, all the horse racing derbies, all the running marathon events, golf with Kingfisher Ultra, which is a slightly more premium product and a slightly more premium game, although golf is trying to democratize itself. Hockey, the Kurg Hockey to World Hockey Tournament. Tennis, in the past, we used to do the Sunfeast Open. We've done sailing regattas at Tank Bund Lake in Hyderabad. We've done power boating, on Marine Drive. We've done just so many national level sport sponsorships, as well as corporate cricket, corporate football, and so on and so forth. And the reason the organizers were very, very keen to have us is because we do a 360-degree amplification around it, from print to radio to television to digital to on-ground events. We did something where you could, let's say, win a tournament and you'll come and bowl to Virat Kohli. If you bowl him out, you get 50,000 rupees or 100,000 rupees. We do a tournament where we do let's say, competitions where Soham could enter and win a pass to a party where Chris Gayle will be the DJ for the night. These are experiences that money cannot buy. That was the cardinal rule, that Kingfisher will bring to you experience that money cannot buy. Pepsi used to do it much more. And you see, when Pepsi became title sponsors again for 2 or 3 years, they did it their memory was of having sponsored cricket 25 years ago. The traditional, do a movie with one of the stars, with Ranbir Kapoor making fun of some cricketers or whatever, and do the traditional sort of, television heavy. But because at UB, the Alcobev industry was not allowed to advertise on TV, we developed skill sets of execution. So serving beer in the stadium, merchandise, on-ground competitions, television, print, radios, all sorts of interesting consumer engagement. And the organizers knew that we would amplify the event way beyond their own media plan. That is why, even though we were not the top 20 spenders on IPL, we were amongst the top 5 recall brands across IPL. And remember, Soham, we were never central sponsors of IPL. Yet people assume we were central. We sponsored the teams. We were not central sponsors. That fit in with our divided by teams, united by Kingfisher. Also remember the teams own the stadiums during IPL. So you could do what you wanted in the stadium, subject to, of course, state regulation and rules, as long as you had team permission. So I think we were very smart about it. And we didn't want to be central sponsors and get drowned out by the Reliance Geos and Vivos and Oppos of the world. We don't have that. We didn't have that kind of money. Lastly, I think the way to associate has now changed a lot because audiences are far more sophisticated. You have a plethora of content being served across a variety of platforms and being accessed by an innumerable number of devices. And if you don't like something, you just switch off. You'll be watching IPL and talking to your friend and maybe cooking
Yeah.
all at the same time. It's all,
Right.
you can watch downloaded versions, recorded versions, etc. You cannot go in with the older sort of approach. One last
Mhm.
thing is that at Kingfisher we used to do a lot of scientific research around all our IPL initiatives. We went off the front jerseys fairly early in our within a 4 or 5 years. We went off all the front jerseys because we realized that was not adding value, and the amount that the teams were charging for the jersey, that money would be better spent in doing merchandise and fan T-shirts and other contests and so on and so forth. So we're constantly evaluating through very scientific research, constantly bettering ourselves, and looking at how we can impact those metrics. I mean, there was probably more effort and time and resources spent in evaluating what we were doing, whether it was working, what is not working, what do we need to change, what do we need to drop altogether, what do we need to build on and improve, all the time. So
Right.
that it's and it involves a lot of work. And the reason we had to do that, Som, was because we weren't allowed to advertise so much on television and print and radio. But for a
Mhm.
corporate with large budget that is allowed to, they're just lazy. They just put in ads and just do whatever they need to do, and then you get drowned out with because there are people who spend much more money than you.
True.
So you just need to do it differently.
Yeah. So I'd just like to bring out one more part of the question, which I think we could respond to separately, about the impact of corporate intervention in specific sports. Like, are there instances where the fact that you've intervened and sponsored something or looked to create engagement around that sport has actually gone on and helped that sport, develop or grow, find better talent, create an ecosystem apart from cricket, of course, because cricket, it's obvious that how it has an impact. But anything else, since you have such a wide area experience.
See, this is a question that has been asked to me very often. That shouldn't you start a cricket academy? Shouldn't you people start a, football academy, etc.? And I say no. My job is to manufacture and market beer. I'm sorry, I'm talking as if I'm still CMO at UB, which I'm not. But since I was there for 9 years, I mean, it's a little hard to sort of let go. Uh, our job is to manufacture and market and sell beer, because that's my responsibility to my stakeholders. My job is to utilize whatever assets are at my disposal to further my commercial interests. Now, if you're,
Mhm.
and because I noticed somewhere you also talking about sport as CSR, our CSR was around primary health, and I was part of that team that handled it. I mean, primary health, primary education, water conservation, and this was largely in the vicinity of our breweries, because we use 4 liters of water, or little less now because we are up to global standards, about 3.5 liters of water for every liter of beer made. And our aim was to become a water neutral company by 2030. So, which means you release back into the environment as much water as you use. So those were far more critical sort of elements to a sport. Doesn't have a place there. Now, there. Having said that, there are companies that have done a lot for developing sport. The Tatas, for instance, have run academies, and I think the Jamshedpur ground in ISL is actually owned by them, and they own a team as well. In the old days, I mean, Reliance does a lot for sport. We have, they practically own all of ISL. They own Dream 11 as well. Um, and public sector companies in the past have done a lot. I mean, Air India had hockey teams and cricket teams, ONGC, Gas Authority, Steel Authority of India. In fact, they used to hire people only to play for their sport team, because that was, to my mind, the beginning of the so-called club culture. Even someone like Sunil Gavaskar, was used to be an employee of Nirlon Fabrics, and I think I don't know whether Mohan Bagan had a cricket team as well. East Bengal in the past also, I think, had. So there were companies that have done a little bit for sport, but it really has to be largely the government of India treating this, because there can be a lot of revenue that can be generated from the entire sports ecosystem. But the challenge is there, which we will talk about. But
Mm.
I'm afraid that a corporate's responsibility is towards its stakeholders and maximizing shareholder returns, because that's the stark reality. And one last thing I'll say, which will be controversial. While I did say that corporates and brands associate with sport because they believe it will deliver positive rub-off on their businesses, do not discount the impact of the ego of the owners and CEOs as well. Because globally, very few sporting clubs across any sport have made money consistently. Even
Mm.
in Premier League football, many clubs do not make money.
Yeah.
I had to, with great difficulty, I persuaded Vijay Mallya not to buy a team in the ISL for 130, 140 crores, because I told him, first of all, you'll take that budget out of my advertising budget, which I don't want. But more importantly, I mean, it's just a completely different business. How are you going to run it? I can't run it. I don't have the time or bandwidth. You need to hire professionals, etc., to run it. And his reference point was, my friend Roman advised
Abramovich.
me. Yeah, so he advised me. So I said, he owns Chelsea, but he's
He
like,
was
he's got some
Chelsea. Oh, wow.
$5 billion, right? Of Brian Glazer. See, so you're well informed about Premier League
Uh,
football. It's big, rich Russian oligarchs or sheikhs in
Billionaires.
Dubai,
Yes. Yeah.
billionaires who just want a plaything.
And
Even
these
in
days, hedge
Reliance's,
funds
yeah,
also.
even in Reliance's case, it's Mukesh Bhai saying to Nita Ben that, chalo, you do something. Yeah, children are grown up, you do something, right? So it's
Right.
giant egos as well. Now, for
Right.
instance, in the
Right.
case of Heineken, we've
Hmm.
always stayed away from Formula One sponsorship, because we said that drink drive is a dangerous combination. You're a beer company, you cannot possibly sort of sponsor a driving event.
Hmm.
You're a soft target. But we've started doing it now, and very cleverly, as a bit of marketing genius, is that they're saying we will sponsor the driving event to raise awareness about drink driving.
Wow.
So
That's
it's a
smart.
great spin, right? It's a great spin. So
Hmm.
where they said they stayed away from Formula One for years, and
Hmm.
about 4 or 5 years ago, they started sponsoring. They've got title sponsorship for 3, 4 races, but those title sponsorships are in markets where they're struggling to make headway. So the Shanghais of the world and the Singapores of the world, and everywhere else where they're already strong, they're just associate sponsorships, or they're just pouring brand, etc. Now, even the line has been, and we got Sir Jackie Stewart and all the ads, and I met Sir Jackie Stewart, and it's incredible. But even the lines, are, if you drive, never drink. It's not, if you're drinking, then don't drive. They put Formula One ahead. So if you drive, never drink. But one of the big reasons was the then CEO loved Formula One racing. So never
Right.
discount the impact of the promoter and CEO who
Hmm.
personally likes the sport. I mean, there's no doubt Vijay Mallya loves cricket. He plays it, and he's a very good sportsman, by the way. I've played squash
Hmm.
with him. He's got great hand-eye coordination. So, sometimes your personal likes and what you want also comes in.
Hmm. True. And as you spoke about how the government needs to take some hold, and because sports can be a big revenue driver, it can be a boon for parts of a city or an economy or small state if they have an ecosystem. I think along similar lines. Then I want to proceed towards the idea of India as a sporting country and what the economics of sports can be. Cricket, of course, is fully exploited potential in terms of academies, the whole ecosystem from the ground up. But what about it in other sports like football or tennis or maybe any other sport that you have an example of? What do we need to do to build an ecosystem which has economics at the heart, as you say, shareholder value, and being a business, bringing a business mindset, how payoffs can be created for people and incentives are drawn in so that people are drawn
The irony is that our largest sport is actually played by only 8 or 10 nations across the world. Even
in.
in
Yeah,
England, you say cricket, what's that? Because you'll have football fields every 100 meters, right?
true.
And cricket is something that the last page you see the older gentlemen on a Sunday evening are watching cricket and having their beer and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but yes, in India, cricket is the largest sport. Now, cricket has done very well for itself, but it's ruined every other sport as well. And hold that statement, because there is responsibility with every other sport as well, and we'll come to that. Having said that, the BCCI can do even better. To start with, why should the word control be in their name? Why should it be Board of Control for Cricket? What are you trying to control? No board anywhere in the world amongst all the 8 or 10 nations has the word control in it. It's all Cricket Australia, Cricket New Zealand, or the England and Wales Cricket Board, etc. Why can't it just be Indian Cricket Board or Cricket India? Why the word control? Because that's the philosophy, that's the logic, and the whole Babu mentality of all the politicians wanting to. Because there's nothing that unites the politicians and the Babus like cricket does. Without taking names, because they'll all I'll go into jail for this in today's times. But politicians, I've seen them sitting next to each other. I mean, all the famous politicians of all different parties, some alive, some not with us anymore, sitting and eating and drinking from the same plate when it comes to cricket. So BCCI can do much better as well. They can put in more stadiums. I mean, I lived for many years in Delhi. Where is a truly world-class global stadium in Delhi? Firozshah Kotla is pathetic. The viewer experience is horrible. You have to walk past urinals. You have to park your car 2 kilometers away, and then you'll be groped, and all sorts of. You go through 6 levels of security. The ground is not so great. You sit in the corporate boxes. The ceiling comes to an extent where the ball goes up. You can't see it after a bit, and then you have to wait for it to come down as well. I mean, what kind of an experience is that? So each major big metro should have a world-class. Why shouldn't there be a stadium like Motera or now Narendra Modi Cricket Stadium, one of that size in the top 20 cities in this country? Why not? They can do much more. They can have better facilities, better infrastructure, especially at division and grade and Ranji levels. They can have a much more robust and professional ecosystem, which includes administration and marketing as well. Today, the entire ecosystem is peopled by ex-players. Why is it necessary for an ex-India bowler to be the bowling coach? Why is it necessary for an ex-India batting batter to be the batting coach? It helps, but it's not necessary. Where are the people who are studying? I don't know whether you're an engineer. Where are the people who perhaps would study biomechanics and fluid dynamics and time and motion and use that to come in? I mean, we saw those kind of pictures in the Rocky movies like 25 years ago. And I don't even want to talk about the level, from virtual simulations to visualizations and all sorts of other software that, technology is one of my favorite topics is technology in sport, and how, if used correctly, it can really enhance the viewing aspect of sport. So I think cricket, they've done really well, but they can do even better than that. One big advantage with cricket, Soham, is, and nowhere is this manifested more vividly than in IPL, is that you have the best players in the world of that sport playing in your backyard on a daily basis. I can go in and see the best players in the world. And that is why I once told someone very high up in Reliance that ISL is a never story in India. It simply it's a 30-year story. I said, no, it's a never story. It'll never happen. Why would, Didier Drogba not come here to India to play? The biggest name we've seen in India is probably Alejandro Del Piero and Marco Materazzi and maybe Roberto Carlos, but way past their prime. All the Premier League players who would go where? They'll go to Vegas, they go to Shakhtar, they go to MSL in Japan, they go to play to
China, even
Chinese club, they go to play in Russian club, they go to Galaxy like Beckham went, because the annual budget of one club will be the cost of one player. Where are the Frank Lampards and stuff of those? So they'll never come. Can you imagine Messi or Ronaldo or Kylian Mbappe ever coming to India? They'll never come to play out here. So, and the point is that the audience that is watching them is the one that is also, you're trying to get them to watch ISL. And you must remember one thing, Soham, in India, television and cable is so cheap. My colleagues from Heineken that used to come here say they watch more football for free in India than they're able to do in their own country, because it's all pay-per-view there. For the equivalent of, let's say, $5 or $6, you can, I think there are some, if I recall correctly, there's some 6 or 7 channels showing football. And the same audience can see Messi twice a week. Why will they watch, any Indian player? Because the levels and standards are here. And apart from that, commentary, coverage, etc. By the way, the commentary in cricket also is pathetic. The current commentary in Australia and the one undergoing in for the England series is pathetic. Again, because you're dipping into the pool of ex-players. They're not necessary experts. And I don't need to have played a sport to be an expert commentator there. It's a
So
completely different skill set.
you must like Harsha Bhogle then, because he's not.
Harsha's a good friend of mine, but he's slightly better than the others. Without
I
taking
think he's
names, I
great.
mean,
Yeah, I mean, I
he's
think he's great.
yeah, he's good, but I mean, you have to hear someone like Michael Clarke.
Right.
Incredible. I don't know whether you're a cricket fan and whether you're watching. Look at Nick
No, I
Knight.
did. I've heard Michael Clark. I
Yeah,
used to
look,
like Lakshman Sivaramakrishnan as well. I
you
was.
hear Michael Holding. The level of knowledge and attention and perspective on the game is incredible. People like Nick Knight, people like Richie Beno. I mean, the old days. There's just no comparison, and so on and
Mhm.
so forth. There are many who are very, very good. I think Michael Atherton is very good.
Mhm.
Amongst the Indians, I actually struggle, to find who's good. Harsha would probably be the better out
The
of
best.
all of them. But
Yeah.
so to come back to that, I mean, our entire attitude of the country has to change towards sports.
Hmm.
Where our leaders are not fit, our politicians are not fit at all. Our business leaders are not fit at all. Some of the younger ones are making a big show and dance of it, but nobody is playing sport in this country anymore. I used to hire batches at UB and Spencer's, and I would, at the induction programs, I would ask them, how many of you have played sport in your life? And not a single hand would go up in a room full of 25 youth. And I said, not competitively, I mean recreationally, how many of you have played sport? Not a single hand goes up. And they all
Where I
and that's
have to ask you where you're hiring from because
I'm
I
talking about the MDIs, the IIMs, the NIFTs,
play a lot of sport here and
yeah,
I'm in
but
Calcutta.
but you're
But
the exception to the rule, right? There are places like Goa, Kerala, and Calcutta which have had sporting history, or maybe even a little bit in Bombay. But these are all boys and girls from smaller towns who've come in and sort of, and all my well-to-do friends, their children, none of them play sport.
okay.
They played sports a little bit, and then the whole pressure of studies, etc., just takes them away from sport. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the makeup of the national football team, the Indian national rugby team, the Indian cricket team, all the Indian cycling team, all the boxers. Everyone, by and large, is coming from smaller towns.
Hmm.
And for them, it is more than just sport. So it is a ticket to a better life.
Better life.
Remember,
Yes.
it's a passport to just like they used baseball and, well, they use professional basketball and pro football in America to get the blacks off the street and
Hmm.
out of crime, because
Hmm.
they have a natural genetic ability towards athleticism, and that helped bring down crime, and they got a lot of talent going in there. In fact, athletics has suffered as a result of that. A lot of Jamaican athletic talent, a lot of American athletic talent is getting into, because there's no money in athletics, they're all getting into boxing and
Basketball.
pro football and basketball, and to a lesser extent baseball, and so on and so forth. So it is an economic activity. Why do the Gurkhas fight in the army for generations? It's tradition, yes, but essentially it's a job. It's a government job with lifetime security, and yes, there is a small chance that you may get killed, right? But that's what it is. I mean, doctors in India, the first preference is to get a government job, because it's a job for it's lifetime security. Why can't sports become like that? So get
But inherently,
lifetime.
but inherently sports, across the world isn't like that because, of course, in India you see this government job thing being quite important for generations. Less so these days. I mean, in my generation, I don't find the same allure for it. But elsewhere, sport has not taken that path. Sport has taken the path of privatization, business, incentives, money. As you said, the NBA, the professional football league.
You're
So
right.
how
See,
can we?
for that, two, three things have to change, Soham. Number one is the attitude of all parents towards sports. Because our parents are very happy to run after Virat Kohli for his autograph, but when your son comes and tells you, I want to give up studies and focus on playing cricket for India, he'll get two tight slaps and say, go back and study Kal chemistry ka exam hai. Right?
Right.
My daughter was brilliant at studies, obviously takes after her mother. She was came first in school and stuff, but she's studying music at the Berklee College of Music in Boston because she's a phenomenal musical talent. And people tell me, oh, I want you, it must have been a really courageous and brave decision. I said, no, I have one daughter, one child. She's got amazing talent. And I didn't want to go through life being told by people, you know what, Samar, your daughter had so much talent and you pushed her into becoming a doctor, engineer, lawyer, chemist, something like that. So, and we produce, Soham, are you an engineer? I don't know, but
Yes.
so no disrespect to you, but we produce 52,000 doctors every year.
Hmm.
We produce 350,000 MBAs and we produce 1.5 million engineers every year in this country. I'm presuming you've seen Three Idiots. In India, there is a
Yes.
saying that says that in India, you first do engineering and then decide what you want to do in life. So, I mean, attitude of parents has to change first and foremost. Encourage your children to take up sport and to inculcate sports in as a way of life, because it's not just sport. It teaches you discipline, it teaches you hard work, sacrifice, teamwork, learning how to handle victory, more importantly, learning how to handle defeat with grace, respecting the opposition. It builds life skills with you.
Hmm.
If I owe a large part of my success to the fact that I played team sports all my life, how to manage with resources that are not necessarily optimal, and how to build winning combination. These are all business skills and life skills that you develop. Now
True.
imagine a country where generations after generations have not played any sport, including your leaders and business leaders, politicians, role models. You'll find so fitness as a culture in India needs to change. The thought around it. Number two, parents' attitude towards encouraging their children to take up sport. Um, Curriculum needs to change. The curriculum needs to change. In my generation, everyone had to play sport. There was no question whether you were good or bad. People, you'll fall down, people will laugh at you, make a fool of you, and you go back and learn, and you'll be good at something else. But today, you can't push children into sport. You're body shaming them, and it'll be all on Facebook. And you don't have to be politically correct, and you can sue teachers and sue students. I mean, the amount we've been beaten by our teachers and our parents, it's a sensitive subject on a slippery slope, and one can't sort of talk about it unless there's context to it. But I'm eternally grateful for all that. It was, yes, it is contextual. It was appropriate at the time. Maybe things change. But the curriculum definitely needs to change because there's just so much emphasis on competition and studies. And I mean, kids are coming to me. My daughter got some 96% and she felt that she was a failure. I mean, I mean, I said कि हमारे ज़माने में भी 98, 99 होता था, but वो बुखार होता था, marks नहीं आते थे उतने. So that's how it is. So,
Yeah.
and lastly, infrastructure has to be far more robust. You may have. So, for instance, why doesn't India have 20,000 tennis courts in this country, or 200,000, or 2 million tennis courts? The reason it doesn't have is, I mean, because it doesn't have. You answer this question. Leander Pace is about to retire. Mahesh Bhupati, Rohan Bopanna. Who is the next big tennis star for us? Sumit Nagal is already some 20, I think, middle to late 20s. Ankita Raina is some middle 20s, etc. Federer, Nadal, Djokovic has already won some 5 majors or 10 majors by the time they were that age. Who's the next tennis sports star? Even more, Saina retires. I mean, Saina Nehwal will retire in a couple of years. PV Sindhu has maybe 5 years with her. Who's the next badminton star after them? Who's the next female Indian star after Sania Mirza? Where is the pipeline investment? Where are the stadiums? Where is the money that is coming in? And frankly, there is more money in professional sport than ever before in this country. There is far greater facilities than ever before in this country. Yet they are not being used because people want to get a job. People don't see security. So some sort of private-public partnership in terms of, and I'm saying maybe jobs, not necessarily for the players, because the players really have to deliver on the ground, but the entire ecosystem around it. And we can come to that. And lastly, I mean, so just staying on that infrastructure and curriculum. Yes, we do have a new national education policy. First of all, our entire education system needs an overhaul. We need several thousand universities, each with maybe 8 or 10 colleges to take care of what's happening. And I do a lot of work with education, and the emphasis on AI and ML that so many countries, including China and even a country like Estonia, is putting in. I mean, China builds 200 AI-enabled schools every month. So that's another level altogether. But our education system is hopelessly outdated. And I think the current dispensation seems more keen in correcting history than worrying about the future. I'm very fond of saying, as a country, we are obsessed with our past, indifferent about our present, and oblivious about our future. So I'm a little more pessimistic than I would like you people to be. Lastly, genetics needs to definitely plays a part. So, and that's the end. I mean, we cannot have sprinters like Usain Bolt. We simply cannot. On the other hand, we cannot have a marathon runner like Eliud Kipchoge. I mean, I've met both these people, but yes, Indians are better suited to middle distance races, 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters. And some of our record by Sriram Singh and Shivnath Singh, I think one or two of them still stand as the national record, and we are closer to the world timings in those events than we are. Events that require skills, we can be as good as the next person, where it is not about power and speed and fast twitch muscle fiber. So archery, for instance, or shooting, for instance, we can do well there. And one last thing I'd like to say: female athletes versus male athletes. You'll notice that in the last 15 years, our female athletes have been more successful within their sphere than the male athletes have been within their sphere. And there are several reasons for it. I mean, they work much harder. And of course, it's a very small, very, very small percentage of all the female athletes that actually consist of the pool that eventually rise up there. But the ones who do have just iron will and determination.
Yeah, I have a pet theory about that, because to overcome like the hurdle to get into sport as a male is quite low compared to what it would be as a female. You'd have to be
True.
10 times or 15 times as good as someone in your family is, your own brother, elder, younger, who may have gotten into sport. And if you want to get into sport, you have to prove 10 more things and get there. So they are, as you said, iron will and determination and all that. Just one more thing, because we had that little banter about Arsenal and RCB at the beginning of the interview. I'd like to tell you, I had to take the CAT 3 times, and I think a large part of the tenacity to take it, the same exam, you're being defeated twice and you still go again the third time. I think that comes from having suffered for years as an Arsenal fan, not winning anything. You just, fight it out and go on,
Absolutely,
try again.
absolutely. And the thing is, it doesn't change your loyalty to your team, no matter what the result.
Yeah,
You'll probably still sing the anthem and so on and so forth. And
yeah.
I mean, I see people it's like your life is not complete until you've been to the Emirates Stadium, the Gunners Stadium and stuff like that. So, and I don't know whether you've been, but
I have,
I'm sure
unfortunately,
it's
I
on
have.
your I'm sure it's on your bucket list, to
Absolutely,
go
it's
there.
it's on my bucket list. Not just to go to the Emirates, but actually I think the best thing I could do with my life is probably go and meet Arsene Wenger while he's still walking the planet. That would be a dream come true for me. In fact, I
Mm.
was hoping to go on a student exchange to Europe and try that out.
By
Um,
the way, both since you're an Arsenal fan, Arsenal, Liverpool, Barca, Real, Manchester United, and Real Madrid all reached out to me at Kingfisher for us to sponsor them. What they were planning to do is set up fan clubs and sports academies
in India,
in Asia and in India. See,
okay,
because Europe, finally the audience is limited, right? And
limited, yes.
the number of people who watch matches is much larger than the home country. So, and
Hmm.
which is why you'll notice that some of the timings are tending to change to be a little more
Yes.
friendly towards Asia and India as well. So I've got
Hmm.
T-shirts and fancy mahogany boxes with my name from all these companies lying in my cupboard out here. But yeah, so
Very
the
jealous.
point is that these clubs also recognize the fact that they recognize that there is an audience there for their sport and their club, and they're willing to try and do something about it. That's,
Hmm.
to me, speaks of the professionalism of those clubs.
Hmm. And
Maybe I'll just add one sentence in terms of the opportunity, something that you mentioned, other than being a player.
yeah, yeah.
There are several more opportunities today. Amongst within the team also itself, there are so many different coaches. You have
Mhm.
doctors, you have physiotherapists, you have rehabilitation specialists, you have strength coaches, endurance, conditioning coaches, recovery experts,
Hmm.
mental coaches, people who are specializing in visualization, people
Hmm.
who are specializing in manifestation and other. I mean, I know sportsmen who are using hypnosis. As then of course the more physical aspects of dietitians and nutritionists. So there are a variety of careers possible within the immediate playing ecosystem. Then
Mhm.
there are other opportunities within the larger ecosystem in sports broadcasters today,
Hmm.
anchors, content creators, and it's the whole digital platform. I mean, anyone. That's what you're doing today. You're a content creator around sport. For instance, you're encouraging debate and discussion. You could be a podcaster. You can be a presenter. You can be an expert. You could be an analyst. Sports analysis is going to explode. And bringing science into sport and data and technology into sport is going to explode. It's already exploding. Being a talk show host, so that's the immediate, let's say, outer circle. So you have the players in between. I talked about the outer circle, the next outer circle of the broadcaster, and then the final outer circle of being, let's say, an administrator in sport, being, in the management of a club team,
Hmm.
marketing experts, being an event manager. And then
Hmm.
the final circle outside of being, perhaps, which obviously many of us cannot, most of us will not be able to, who is being lobbyists for sports, being a policy maker for instance, in the ministry, whether it's state government or central government level, anti-corruption unit. There's just a whole ecosystem, uh, and therefore opportunities possible in this entire ecosystem. So those, I just wanted to add that part because it was a question that you had asked.
Do you feel there is a need for sports management as an educational possibility that educates people into these domains, that you have these strength coaches or fitness guys. They have a You of course have some degrees which cater to them, but more of the people in that circle where they're just aligned to sport, but they maybe they have some of those skills based on their education, but maybe you need some additional, like a master's or a specialization in their bachelor's, where you can fit them into the domain more easily, like there's a clear pathway into the domain.
Most certainly, I think there needs to be, first of all, sport should be seen as a legitimate economic activity and run like any other sector of business. Like you have staples, you have commodities, you have steel, iron, information technology, currency market. There should be sports as an economic sector. So that's number one. We need a far higher degree of professionalism and professionals. And I don't just necessarily mean ex-sports persons, although I do believe that someone like Rajyavardhan Rathore in the past, and Kiran Rijiju most recently, and Sarbananda Sonowal to a lesser extent before him, also play someone who's young, someone who's been a sports person at some level, purely because he or she would understand what sports and sports people go through, at least from that point of view. You need for colleges and institutes and university that offer formal sports and sports management degrees. I mean, imagine, I would like to see a day of MBA sports management, for instance, or a bachelor's degree in sports management. We need, I mean, look at the example of the USA and Great Britain, and although it may not be politically correct, but China and Russia, in terms of the entire college sports, and the school level sports facilities and program that has been responsible for their athletics and Olympic success. So all those things are there. And you know what? If you do it right, there can be successes in India as well. Look, why do so many boxers come out of Bhiwani? Because of the number of boxing coaches there, the amount of boxing rings there, the genetic strength of the Jats, and it's just had a culture and history of wrestling and boxing. And look at all the wrestlers and boxers coming out of Bhiwani. Why do so many archers come out of Jharkhand? Right from Limbaram's days, when he went back and set up academies, and the forest tribals and Santha, are used to fighting with bows and arrows. So it's built over years. You see this whole sport of Kambala, where running with the buffaloes, etc. in Kerala. Some of those sprinters are built like national, international level athletes. Or look at Kurg for hockey. Every Kurg child grows up playing hockey, whether you're a man or a woman. There was a time when 50% of the Indian hockey team was full of Kodavas from Kurg. Or look at Karnataka and cricket. I mean, we've had so many players from Karnataka who have represented India in cricket and continue to do so. From Rahul Dravid to Anil Kumble to Javagal Srinath to Venkatesh Prasad to KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Vinay Kumar. I mean, it's an unending machine, because they've put in so much work. So if all of it comes together, there are successes that you can look at even in India, even today.
Right. And I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, because you set up an industry when there is some payoff to get, or some market for it. So education also is an industry and sports is an industry. So if you want to
Absolutely.
set up a sporting, say a degree in sports science or sports management, then you're hoping that there'll be someone to recruit these kids or at least give them a future. And if that exists, then you build this, or do you build this and wait for that to happen? I think that's a bit of a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah, and it starts from the top. Today the U.S. president releases his personal medical records at regular intervals. It's supposed to be a surrogate for the state of the health of the nation, right? Similar is true of, I mean, look at Obama played basketball. Bill Clinton was, I'm told, the fittest, oh, sorry, George Bush, the son, the junior, was the fittest post-war president that America has had. He could run. I mean, the Secret Service couldn't keep up with him when he used to run, and so on and so forth. I mean, Trump, of course, played golf, and Biden, I think, plays golf as well, but both are older men. But I'm just saying the fitness levels of, let's say, leaders in the Western world. Look at Vladimir Putin. I mean, he's like riding horses bareback, wrestling with bears, and driving Formula One cars. Now, none of those values are given any importance in a country like ours. Here it is about wisdom and gray hair and erudition and so on and so forth, which is necessary, but it wouldn't hurt, right? I'm seeing some pictures of Rahul Gandhi with his abs showing, doing the rounds. I mean, he's apparently now. I don't know whether it's sort of manipulated or is it genuine, but I was personally very impressed. I mean, I'm not impressed with Rahul Gandhi otherwise, but the fact that he, even at 50, if that picture is actually not manipulated, he's just come out of he swam in, I think, near Pondicherry. He swam along with the fishermen for 10 minutes, and he's come out completely soaked, and the guy's looking buff. I'd like my politicians to be like that. I'd like my politicians to be like Kiran Rijiju and Rajavardhan Rathore. They're doing push-ups, pull-ups, etc. Because a fit body means a fit mind. So it's as simple as that.
True. I think this obsession with fitness and stuff, it could start coming because people started talking about the size of your chest, and then six-pack abs and so on. Maybe it's catching on. It's a good thing. Someone set the ball rolling. I hope it catches on. But
six packs by themselves are not necessarily very healthy because you have to do a lot of things, starve yourself to get that, drink very little water amongst every other thing. So that's not necessarily the healthiest thing. But yeah, I think people like Virat, and also if I told you that there are about 6 players in the Indian side who have better six packs than Virat, you wouldn't believe me. Okay. And so the fitness levels of the Indian cricket team are, or even in the Indian hockey team, etc. I mean, it's incredible. I've run on the treadmill next to Saina Nehwal. She ran at 14 kilometers an hour for 70 minutes. I've run next to Sardar Singh on a treadmill, who was the captain of the Indian team. He ran at 21 kilometers an hour for 20 minutes. So I mean, those there are that level of fitness as well. So things are significant. Navdeep Saini's 6-pack, Jasprit Bumrah's 6-packs, Mayank Agarwal's 6-packs. What's this guy? Manish Pandey. All better 6-packs than Virat Kohli. But Virat Kohli started the revolution. He represents, and he epitomizes that for the Indian cricket team. So things are changing, definitely. It's simple. Money comes in, professionalism comes in, performance will be at a premium.
I'd like to put this as a last question. You've already spoken about this in some ways, but just if you could outline again, what does sport mean to you as a person in your life? What does it mean?
Yeah, it means everything, frankly. If I were not able to move, I would want to die. I told we went to see my wife's grandmother about 3 years ago, and she was, unfortunately, had suffered a paralytic stroke, and she was 89 at the time, I think 88 or 89. And my daughter was going off to Boston to study at Berkeley, at the Berkeley College of Music. And my wife's grandmother was sort of paralyzed and semi-comatose and not recognizing anyone. And the moment she saw my daughter, she sort of held her hand and started shouting, and I believe that she recognized her. And that was, of course, very disturbing for my daughter because she hadn't seen a human being with pipes and tubes stuck into the body. And my daughter flew off to America a few days later, and her great grandmother passed away a few days later. But this is not the story. The story is, when I saw this, I told my daughter, I said, you promised me that you will not leave me in the hospital stuck with tubes and pipes like that. And I said, if it comes to that, I want to go home. I firmly believe that my wife's grandmother wanted to come home. In your last days, you do not want to be in hospital. So I cannot envision a life for myself where I'm not mobile, I'm not active, I'm not lifting my weights, I'm not running, I'll be a horror, I'll be a nightmare to deal with. I'll be in a bad mood, I'll have body pains and aches and stuff. See, I don't drink, I don't smoke. That's the only outlet, and that's what clears my running, clears my mind. I get some of my bright ideas during that. So, and it's a way of life for me, the process, the preparation, the discipline, and the sheer joy that sport, and and it's just focusing on you yourself. And at the end of the day, if you're healthy and fit, you just lead a better quality of life. I mean, I want to remain fit so I can carry my grandchildren up the stairs without having to use the lift, for instance. So my motivations are a little different from the guy who's coming in to build muscles out there. So sport is everything to me. I mean, I would die without sport. It's as simple as that. Whether it is watching or playing or meeting my sports friends, etc., it's everything to me. It's my lifeblood.
That's quite an answer, and thank you for letting us into that little part of your mind where you have kept this thought. And I hope you don't stop moving, at least to the next, in the foreseeable future. And I hope I can, at your age, be running around and lifting weights, and hopefully learn this from you and keep that discipline intact. And thank you so much for your time today. Really learned a lot, heard about a lot of things, and some perspectives which are quite different from my own. But I feel that there will be people in the audience who sort of agree that these are also perspectives important to have and hold. So thanks a lot for your time.